So let me explain the difference between this new series of products we're developing, or we have now, called the G2 series for Generation 2 versus the existing products. The majority of the products on our website, they're called G1. The difference is that in the G1, yes, we do the separation. We have the graphical user interface on a separate processor than the processor, the embedded guy doing the core functionality. But in G1, the embedded processor doing the core functionality was controlling the GUI as a slave. It gave you the nice separation, but the problem with that one is that the person doing the embedded processor part really shouldn't be doing the GUI part. It also means that if you want to change the GUI, you have to change that embedded component. So with the G2 series, we've done full separation right now so that the graphical engine is completely separated from the embedded part. You can create, not only that, but we've created an interface layer in the middle that allows you to, using best practices, change and design the graphical interface without having to change anything in the underlying core. That's huge. Graphical interfaces, unlike practically any other engineering endeavor, is more art. You know what you like when you see it. They're very hard to specify. You can specify it on paper. It's not worth the paper it's printed on, as they say. You have to touch it. You have to feel it. Graphical interface design is something that has to be done with, you've got three major stakeholders. You've got marketing that say what I can sell. You've got the users that say what's usable, what I will enjoy using, what's intuitive to me. When I come up to it, I immediately know how to use it. And then you've got design development that says what can be done. Okay, what are the different interface elements that you're allowed to play with? It's very important that you have to have all three. You have to have all three. But a lot of the times, GUI design is interactive. It's just like human design. It's intuitive design. You make a door, you try to use it, it doesn't work, you have to change it. GUIs are the same way. Somebody thinks, oh, this would be great, why don't we just do this? And then you give it, maybe the developer thinks, oh, this is a neat way of doing things, a scroll button, a whatever. You give it to the user and they say, no, when I'm doing my work, I don't want to do it that. I need to go sideways, I need to do this. The users know what they need out of the instrument. The designers know what's possible, and the marketing people have an input as to what's going to sell from a marketing. What can they sell as a new feature? How does it compare to competition, whatever. But those activities of designing the GUI should not be bound up with the activity of doing the core functionality of the component, whatever it is. So in our new system, in the G2 system, we've split them. It adds a little more complexity, and I'm not a big fan of complexity, but the added complexity of the interface in the middle means that these individual parts are simpler. You're not doing it all in one. And it's a divide and conquer concept, and it's a domain knowledge separation. The low-level people doing the embedded, that's what they know. They don't have to worry about GUIs. They don't have to worry about what the users want. They simply have to allow the GUI, which is designed separately, to be able to access all the functionality, the low-level functionality, and they have to make sure that the low-level functionality works, it's testable, and it can be maintained. The GUI stuff is going to change. I mean, the typical embedded engineers or product design's worst nightmare is someone says, oh, I want to move everything around. I want to I want to reskin the GUI. And if it's tightly connected, it's a lot of work. But if it's loosely coupled, then you can do quick redesigns. You can skin if you want to do an OEM variation or whatever. So that was the idea behind the G2 series, the architecture. One of the things that's not always obvious about graphical design, GUI design, is that simple placement of controls and types of controls really can matter to a user. I'll give you an example. We had a laser interface design where the developer, the coder, made up a mock-up of a screen, and they were trying to make it look pretty. And so they did these arrow buttons. The type of screen we were using, sorry, that's minus and that's plus. The type of screen we were using was a resistive screen that doesn't do slides very well. Well, it's actually more than that. Again, this is a user interface thing. When you're doing a skin laser or something, you don't want a slider because you can go from no harm to deadly too easily. So the plus and the minus buttons where you're moving an indicator is better that way, because this way you can only go up and down by increments. You have to consciously say, yes, I'm going up. It's not just a move it around. Anyway, so there was a beautiful interface that the person came up with, and it had this component in it showing where you were in terms of power or something like that. And the user, this was presented to the potential users of the device, and they said, no, that's no good. It has to be up and down, because all the other instruments in the operating room, in the clinic, etc., they all do it this way. You've got a plus, you've got a minus. So that with a glance, we look at whether it's a dermatological skin thing or an ultrasound thing or whatever, there's a consistency, sort of an industry standard that we've come to expect. This way I can switch from instrument to instrument fairly quickly. So the idea that you need to be able to change a GUI in response to a user concern, you have to be able to do that. That's critical. And you certainly don't want to change like this. Now this is an easy change because it's still a plus and minus with the thing in the middle. But let's say if it went from this to a scroll bar, or if it went from this to a dial, that kind of change, you don't want that to impact, again, the core functionality, which is in the device. So GUI changes should be able to be implemented independently of the core functionality, and that's why we like the divide and conquer architecture.